Oi, Chester is back again, and today I would like to show you my first ever game against Levi Rosman, aka GothamChess. Despite I am slightly higher rated, at least in FIDE, than Levi, I know that he is an absolute beast in online blitz. But for now, I don't want to spoil any surprises, so let's get down to business. I started this game with the move d4, just trying to control the center, and Levi surprised me right away. Played the move b6, planning to fianchet out the bishop. And I mean, I know the theory of this opening, but I was thinking, okay, well, then he's a pretty tactical player, right? And now just to explain, I didn't really know who he was back then, because this is from 2020, during COVID. He wasn't as famous as he is now. But back then I was thinking, oh, well, he probably wants to play something tactical, something sharp. So I just simply responded with the move e4. You know, grabbing the space in the center, now having this ideal pawn structure that I've been talking about quite a lot in all of my videos. It is probably the most logical way of how to try to punish black for playing the move b6, which seems to be a bit inferior. But this opening is actually still quite tricky, so let's see what happened next. Let me play the move bishop e7, simply attacking the pawn on e4. And I responded with the move bishop d3, simply protecting the pawn on e4. All makes sense so far. Now after e6, I played perhaps a little bit mysterious move, queen e2. It seems to be a little bit more logical to play something like knight f3 or knight c3. But I'm not a big fan of the move knight c3 because my opponent can always pin me, and I don't really like this pin because that knight is also protecting the pawn on e4 that is under some pressure. So I don't really want to go for it. What I want to do is to play queen e2, reinforce the pawn on e4. And now the idea of the move queen e2 is actually that we have a really good way of how to meet the move c5. If black plays the move c5, trying to challenge the center a little bit, and this is one of the most logical ways of how to challenge the center in this opening, we will play the move d5. Under normal circumstances, this pawn would be hanging. However, it is not hanging right now, because after takes, we open up the queen, and we are checking the king. Now, if Levi, for example, played something like bishop e7, it would have been already pretty bad, because we can play d6. And now we are gonna win this piece. If Levi played knight e7, go the same. So the only move that Levi has in this position is queen e7. However, then I can play the move c4, simply protect the pawn on d5. I don't really mind the exchange of queens, because that bishop on b7 really sucks. So black shouldn't play c5 in this position. But that's quite nice for me, right? Because I'm just trying to completely avoid this idea. Well, now Levi decided to challenge the center in a different way, with the move d5, putting pressure on the pawn on e4. Now I just simply play the move knight d2, protecting the pawn on e4, and also anticipating that Levi is going to go for knight f6, which makes the most sense. Needs to develop his pieces, right? So now I play the move e5, and the idea of the move knight d2 becomes apparent, because now I control the e4 square. Levi can't jump to e4, where the knight would be really active, and instead has to retreat with the knight to d7, where it is really ugly. It doesn't have any squares available, right? f6 under control, e5 under control, c5 under control. So now I just carry on developing. And after c5, trying to undermine the pawn chain, I go c3. And now we have this kind of pawn structure that is very typical for the French defense. In the French defense, as a rule of thumb, this bishop almost always sucks. And now I feel like Levi is playing the French, but we've played b6 and bishop e7. I'm feeling like, well, that's just a lot of wasted time just to try to not really even improve the bishop. That sucks. I mean, the bishop still sucks, right? Like, it's not really doing anything because of the pawn on d5. So this should be already better for white. But obviously that's not enough, just getting a better position. We need to also find a way of how to convert it into something more clear. Because if we are just better, we don't have anything concrete. And now I will show you how we will turn something that is not so concrete into something really concrete. But if you want to learn how to do that, you need to watch the rest of the video. And you know what? It would be also great if you could like and subscribe, perhaps write me a comment, so you won't miss any of the educational and entertaining content that I'm posting every single week. So in this position, Levi played the move queen c8. Seems absolutely mysterious, right? But, well, there is actually quite a clear idea behind this move. Levi is just simply preparing to play the move bishop a6 and exchange that bishop on d3 by force. Because this is the best bishop we have. The bishop on c1, not really great, right? All of our pawns in the center are on dark squares, but this bishop is a monster. So at least Levy is trying to take an advantage of having the bishop on b7 and is planning to exchange this bishop. However, the problem is that it is completely neglecting the development. So now I just simply castle short, anticipating that Levy wants to go for bishop a6. And now I played a brilliant move. c4. At the first glance, you might think, why is this move so good, right? Like, what? Like, what? Well, the idea is that I want to blow the center up. I want that center to fall apart and Black's king stripping naked for money in the center. That's what I want. I want to open it up and checkmate Black's king that is stuck in the center. My king, nah, that's safe. Your king is not. And that's exactly why I'm offering so many pawn exchanges. Just to open the position up. Because then the king will be really weak. So what did Levy do? Levy probably should have played something like bishop e7, just planning to castle on the next move. Just getting the king into safety. However, he actually reacted in a way too reactive way. And took on d4. And now this is amazing for me. This is exactly what I was planning to do. I was planning to open up everything, exchange everything. So let's take on d5. Now Levy took on d3, I took with the queen. Levy took on d5, and I took with my knight. Now, in the hindsight, I think it would have been better to take with my queen, because then I have a brutal advantage. I'm putting a lot of pressure on the pawn on d5. It will be quite difficult to save the pawn. If Black plays something like queen b7 or queen c6, I think that that's making the queen just worse, and it buys me some time to develop even stronger attack. However, white is still better, even after knight takes d4. Now Levy played the move bishop c5, and I think that I could have reacted better once again. I played the move e6, which seems to be really juicy. This is really juicy move. Trying to open up the center, right? And the king on e8 is just very, very scared at the moment. Let's put it that way. But it would have been probably a bit better to play something like knight f5, putting pressure on the pawn on g7 and putting pressure on the pawn on d5. Seems like Black's position is really falling apart. But I went for the throat. I don't regret it. I think it was a good move, but knight f5 would have been probably even better. Now Levy finally came up with something really clever. Didn't take, because that's exactly what I was hoping for. Then I take with my knight. My next move is going to be a rookie one. And then discovered check somewhere. c7, winning the rook. Or taking the bishop, or taking on g7, d5 is hanging. Nah, this is already lost. Levy has to avoid this exchange and play the move knight f6 first. And that's exactly what Levy went for. However, the king will still be a little bit weak. But we will see how did Levy try to sort that out. Now, I took on f7, so Black loses the castling rights. And I played the move knight 2 to f3. Improving my knight, opening up the diagonal for the bishop. Maybe at some point I might play knight g5 check or knight e5 check. I'm also reconnecting these two knights. Seems like one of the best moves in the position. I actually think it is the best move in the position. And now Levy played the move rook e8, just planning to castle by hand, getting the king safe. And that makes absolute sense. However, as you can see, like there is some sort of like transformation of different types of advantage. For example, Levy is getting the king safe. On the other hand, he's losing a lot of time by playing all these moves. So that enabled me to play the move bishop g5. I'm getting all of the pieces involved, threatening to take on f6, and that knight is protecting h7. So that's the threat. Now, obviously Levy has to do something about it. King g8 would not really work, because then after this, like this pawn structure is just so damaged, and the king is so weak that he can't go for that. He found the only move once again, move knight bd7, protecting the knight with a knight. So if I take, Levy takes and protects h7. And now Black is quite safe. So I don't really want to exchange the bishop on g5 that is very active for the knight on d7 that is not really active. What I want to do is to just get the rest of the pieces into the game before I start executing some concrete idea. Now I play the move knight f5, with the idea that at some point I might be able to take the bishop that is protecting the d6 square, stopping me from knight d6 check, hitting the queen as well. So lovely little fork. However, I still need to be a little bit careful, because you would be able to meet the rook takes c5 with the move knight takes c5, hitting my queen. So we would probably just exchange queens and I would lose material. However, that knight on f5 is super useful. Knight e6 might be an idea. Knight takes g7 might be an idea. That knight is absolutely brutal there. So Levy played king g8, finally getting the king into safety. But then I played regular d1. As you can see, every single piece is very well developed. But now I need to find a way of how to crack into my opponent's position. So in this position, I played a move that the engine did not really like, but I think it is incredibly tricky for black. I went h4. Now Harry is running forward.
Harry, I've reached the top!
And the question is, how is Levy actually gonna stop Harry? Now, if you play something like h6, I'm afraid that that's just weakening a lot of squares in front of your king. I can possibly take right away. I might even sack, and then, for example, something like queen g6 check. Oh my god, this looks really, really bad. So now I'm just simply planning to do something with the pawn on the h file, something like h5, h6. And now let's see how did Levy deal with that. So Levy played the move a5, and now I play the move h5. Now the idea is that I'm pinning the knight, so knight takes h5 doesn't work because I would win the rook. And now Levy made a big mistake. The only move that he had in this position is queen b8. It just seems so awkward, letting me to go all the way up to h6. But, well, apparently, according to the engine, that's the only way how to play this position. If you go something like knight e5 here, it should be equal. After knight takes, black takes with the queen. Black is trying to simplify. That makes absolute sense because I'm the one attacking. And after h takes g7, you shouldn't even care about the pawn on g7, but that's nuts. Black should play something like knight g4 in this position. And what is White's response against this threat? Something even crazier, king f1. So obviously this is something that is super difficult to see, especially in a blitz game. So Levy didn't go for queen b8, but apparently that would be the only way of how to play this position, how to stay in the game. So Levy played knight e4, thinking that he tricked me, because now he is threatening to take on f2, probably with a knight, and then threatening to take the queen or the rook with a check as well, because the king is behind the knight that takes on f2. However, I don't care, and I shouldn't care. I'm just simply going to take on d8, which is what happened in the game. And after knight takes f2, I just take on d5 with my queen. So, as you can see, both of these pieces are hanging at the moment. But after queen takes d5, rook takes d5, I ran away with both of them. And now I'm threatening to take on c5, and then the knight on f2. So I would exchange rook for two minor pieces, which is 99% of time the best thing you can do. So what Levy did in this position is that he played knight d3 check with the idea of taking the rook and immediately resigned in the view of rook takes c5. Because I actually don't have to move the king. I can take the bishop that is checking me. And if you, let's say, take with your knight, you already piece down and I can, for example, take on b6. And now if Levy takes on b6 with the knight, because the bishop is hanging, I'm going to take the knight on c5. And now, well, white is absolutely winning. So that's about this game. But what is here to learn from this game, you lot? Well, we can certainly conclude that no matter how strong your opponent is, if they break chess principles, what you need to do is to just identify what principles they broke and then just play directly against it. So for example, Levy left his king in the center, completely omitted his development. I opened up the position, and then the rest is history.